here tonight with Brian Clack, and he's running for Montgomery County Constable of Precinct 5. I'm John Wirtz. With me is Brian Crumby, Ken Vaughn, and Del Fessenden. We've already kind of laid out the housekeeping rules, and with that, I'll turn it over to Brian. And again, you have up to 5 minutes. Ken will time you up to 5 minutes, and then each question, when we go around the table, will be up to 2 minutes.
Okay. My name is Brian Clack. I was born in Houston, and my family and I would move to the Magnolia area around 1982, and I started going to the Tomball ISD schools. I live in Magnolia next door to my parents now. I built my house on the same property that we've had for the past 30-something years. I don't plan on leaving the Magnolia area anytime. We enjoy it there. I'm raising my family there now, and I want them to have the same comfort that we had growing up. We felt like it was safe when we were growing up. I know now, working in law enforcement in the area, that we have a major drug problem. With the Precinct 5 Constable's Office, they can and could prevent a lot of the drug issues that we have in our community. That's one of my main goals, is to fight the drug problem in the Magnolia area. If you fight the drug problem, you will fight the common duties that the Constable's Office is assigned each day. On civil process, which is the main part of Precinct 5's duties, is evictions, serving lawsuit paperwork, and all that type of stuff. A lot of that comes from drug addictions. If you're addicted to drugs, you can't afford your bills, you're getting evicted from your houses, you're losing your family, you're losing a lot of things, your vehicles. I want to stop that. I believe, being a strong Christian man and having the values that I was raised in, that's not an option for my family. So I know that as long as you keep it out of their hands, then they can live a more productive life. But there's a lot of ways that we can work at that. I plan on making the department a very proactive department.
Okay, thank you. Describe the function of a constable.
The constable himself is elected official. His duties are to serve all the civil process paperwork for that precinct. At this time, from what I have been told, Precinct 2, I believe, is the highest process serving precinct that there is, and they serve around 5,000 papers a year. That being said, split up over 52 weeks and 5 days a week, and that's the most. That comes down to around 25 a week. Well, with as many employees as they have, that's not much time. There's a lot of extra time each day that they could be used to do something else. So just because civil process is their main duties, it's not the only thing they can do. They can actually get out there and function as regular law enforcement officers and be proactive.
Okay, when you excuse me, you alluded to this in your opening about taking back community and being more proactive in the drug area. Is the sheriff's department falling short in that? Because it seems like you want to have more of an emphasis on the so-called war on drugs, and do you think that's a sheriff's function rather than constable, or how do you see the two functioning together from that perspective, and where you want to take it?
As of right now, the sheriff's department has a specialized team called SIU. There's the Special Investigative Unit, and they will go out and do drug raids throughout the county. Since they're
Go ahead.
it wasn't reset. since there's about, I believe, 8 assigned to that task force, and it's for the entire county, most of the stuff that they're doing is the larger stuff, that 18-wheelers of dope coming into the county by 45 and 59 and the big drug raids. What I'm more concerned in is the one that lives next door to you, the one that lives down the street from you, that lives in the next subdivision over from us. They're in every subdivision. With a task force based out of Conroe, they're not able to go and investigate every single drug house in the county. So it falls back on the law enforcement in that area. Right now, the sheriff's department might have 5 deputies on, and they're going call to call to call, from a family violence to a robbery in progress to a burglary of motor vehicle. Whatever call that they're getting at that time, they're going to that. They don't have any extra time and not really allotted time to investigate drug crimes and drug houses and things like that. I do know that most of our drug houses and the drug dealers that we get are stealing our cars. They're breaking into our cars. They're doing all the stuff to feed their own habit. So proactive policing stops all of it. So the sheriff's department wouldn't be doing as many reports if you were stopping the drug dealers. And they would be able to help out a lot more in the long run.
Okay, thank you.
So let me kind of piggyback on that a little more. So where in Texas is it happening correctly in your mind?
As of right now, in Montgomery County, Precinct 4 Constables Rowdy is very proactive. You can watch the Montgomery County Police Reporter and see that his agency, with the same amount of employees as Precinct 5, makes 10 times the felony arrest than all the others. He is very proactive. He gets all of his papers served, he gets his evictions done, and then he goes out and makes drug busts. And he is cleaning up East County over there.
So how long has
outside of that one, Precinct 4, Harris County does the same thing. They are very proactive.
And who's the constable on 4?
It was Ron Hickman. He's now the sheriff.
So you know
His chief deputy took it over.
So how long have we been on this war on drugs? How long has that been going on?
Since the beginning of the time.
Have we made any progress? I mean,
I know
it's
in
like
the city,
battle that goes on forever that we always lose or something.
it's not a losing battle, but it is a battle if you do not fight it. It'll just get 100 times worse. I know right now we make it a mini drug arrest each week coming through the city and stuff like that. And the more we fight it, the stronger we get on our side to shut certain people down.
Okay. Okay.
All right. How large is the section there in Precinct 5, and what's the budget?
I'm not exactly sure the budget, but Precinct 5 goes from 2978 all the way to the Waller County line, from the Harris County line there at Tomball up to 105 in Montgomery. It's one of the largest precincts in Montgomery County.
What's the staffing level, though?
The staffing level, we have, he's got a constable, chief deputy, the captain, a lieutenant, 2 sergeants, and then 4 deputies on patrol. Then they have, I believe, 9 in the schools right now.
Those are Magnolia ISD?
Magnolia ISD.
Okay.
Did you say 2 lieutenants and how many?
There's 1 lieutenant, and I believe there's 2 sergeants right now.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And you believe that's more than enough to do the serving papers and stuff?
Yes,
so
sir.
you have all this extra time. How many are needed to just do the core duties of the office?
I would have to have an exact count of how many papers they serve each month, in each week to be able to say how many they need, but I do know there's more than enough right now to do the duties that they are doing.
All right.
Okay, following right up on all that line of questioning, the drug problem. I'm sure that Police Department of Magnolia fights the drug problem, so you feel you could be more effective from the Constable of Precinct 5 than you are as a detective for Magnolia. I'd like for you to address that. And also, why is it that since you've been with City of Magnolia for quite some time, why is it you feel the need, the impulse, whatever it is, to leave that position? What is your driving force to leave that position?
The driving force is not a good way to say it because I don't want to leave that position. I really, really enjoy my job. I like working for the City of Magnolia. I've learned a whole lot. With the City of Magnolia, every officer is allowed to do everything. We don't have a traffic unit, a burglar unit, we don't have specialized units. I'm the only detective Magnolia has. If the officers on the street can't solve the crime that they have, then it gets forwarded over to me. So we've all learned from the bottom to the top, and we're able to do everything ourselves. So at the City of Magnolia, I love my job. I don't want to leave my job, but I'm restricting right now to 4 square miles. With Precinct 5 Constable's office, I would be able to work within 140 square miles and be able to be more proactive for that whole area instead of just being struck with the 4 miles that we have in city limits. The city is growing, but it's not ever going to grow to that full extent of the whole precinct. So I believe that I could help that department out more than it's going to help me. That's what I want to do, is help that department.
Okay, and in what ways what will you do that will be more effective at fighting the drug problem and the other types of problems that Precinct 5 has than is currently being done?
I grew up in the area, so I know where a lot of the drug problems are. I know where, when we have a burglary, we can track them down to where it always comes back to one of the drug areas around us. Knowing the area and being able to work in the area, I know that I can make a bigger difference. And
So
I promise.
That doesn't make any sense, because Hill is in the area and he's working it, and he knows it, so the question, and didn't answer the question.
How can you be
Okay.
more effective than the current administration?
Because I'm actually going to work.
Okay, so you're saying he's not, okay.
I will actually be on the streets helping out.
Okay.
Whereas right now, it's not being done.
Okay. Okay. John?
Okay, and question 2, excuse me, 3 major challenges. You said number 1, getting a community to understand that we need proactive constable. 2, getting funding and approval for a local jail, and then, so I understand the distance between Magnolia and, I guess you have to go to Conroe. And the 3, convincing deputies, we need to do away with the car allowance. Let me kind of work backwards. What, you said convincing deputies to go with issued vehicles, why would they be against that? Why would they like the allowance?
Most of the deputies now, they can purchase a $2,000 car and receive up to a $30,000 a year car allowance. And if you're paying for your own gas and you're paying for your own insurance and you're paying for everything on your own vehicle, why would you want to make an arrest and drive all the way to Conroe to book them into jail each day? I mean, it costs you money out of your car allowance to actually work.
So you're saying there's disincentive for making arrests then?
There definitely is.
Okay. So we got,
So that allowance is not by the mile, it's by the per diem?
They're
Month?
issued a certain amount.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we got a new sheriff coming to town. Literally. And, one wants to grow, and I think one may want status quo. If he wants to grow, and there's a finite amount of money, and that sheriff wants that money, what happens to what you want to do from that perspective? How are you going to overcome that? Let's say there's 5 million. I know there's a lot more than that, and the sheriff wants to get a line share of that, for his law enforcement, and it kind of leaves you with, maybe odd man out. Unless they work with you enough to know that you are right there with boots on the ground. But how are you going to overcome that if you get a sheriff in there that doesn't want to do that?
The question, he doesn't want to do that, is that saying he doesn't want a new jail?
Maybe he may want everything to go into Conroe and not put it out and let you have the money for something in Magnolia, or to expand your department to continue, fighting drugs from that perspective. They may want to centralize everything from Conroe. Those are both for me.
Okay, right now, the county has a substation in the Woodlands that is built into the sheriff's department's already built facility in the Woodlands. Then they have one in East County, pretty much the same way. And then Conroe has the main jail. When we take a prisoner from the city of Magnolia, we can either take them to South County, which is here in the Woodlands, or we can take them to Conroe. For me, it takes just as much time to drive through the Woodlands to get to the substation there, or to drive to Conroe. For the county deputies, it's the same. For the sheriff's department, it's the same thing for them. If they make an arrest, they're out of service for several hours going all the way to Conroe. I believe that our commissioner and our sheriff knows that we need this. It's just going to be the push on where we're going to find the money to do it. I believe that there is money there to do it, and if we have to move some out of our own budget to do it, we'll have to find it. If they need us to put it in the constable's office, having a holding cell, because right now Precinct 4 has a holding cell in their office. We can have a holding cell and then send them out. End of the day, have a jail van come and pick everybody up. But right now we lose money by not being able to book them quick and get back out there on the street.
So we talk about salaries being wasteful. I'm guessing none of the current deputies are really on your campaign. I'm guessing there's, not necessarily the deputies, but elaborate what you mean on stop wasting spending on salaries.
Okay, what I mean is, if you've got someone that's getting paid for 8 hours a day, and they got 3 papers to serve, and they get their 3 papers served in the first 3 hours that they're there, they've got 5 more hours to work, what are they getting paid for? They're not sitting at the office trying to decide on what papers they want to serve the next day. They have wasted time. So if you want a full 8 hours of work from your deputies and instead of having that wasted pay, have someone there to force them to work.
So
You get more money.
are you saying that they're sitting around twiddling their thumbs when they don't have papers, or they're doing something else that's useful? Because that's what you want to do. You want to have them do papers part-time and have them go track down criminals part-time.
Correct.
So you are saying that they're twiddling their thumbs?
I'm saying they're not making arrests, for sure.
Okay, so they may be doing things, you're not seeing arrests, you're going off arrest count and warrant count, basically. Okay.
And if you are out doing the warrant roundups on a constant basis, you're bringing money back into the department and the county.
Warrant roundup, bringing back money, what are you referring to?
Like, each one of the Precinct 5 citations that are written, if they're not paid, they go to warrant. And if someone's not out there picking up each one of those individuals that owe on citations and the warrants, then that money's never being brought back into the community, into the county.
So are they not doing that now, then?
I don't hear any warrants.
Is there a backup of warrants citation right now that have to be served, or are they, do you know if they're caught up and everything? 'Cause we
I would say
understand
they're not caught up.
Really?
So have you had a conversation with them, or are you just making some assumptions, or why not have a conversation? And I guess you can save it for the next question, maybe. I'll save it. Since we're out of time.
All right. So, in the answer to question 6, you mentioned that I believe the constitutions are living documents and should not be changed. So, can you explain that? How are they living documents, and what do you mean by that?
I believe that the Constitution was written by a guideline for us to live by each and every day. It is something that I believe in. When I went to school and I learned about the U.S. Constitution, I believed that was something that I wanted to build my life around. As far as not being changed, you don't need to change something that actually worked. And like Second Amendment, they're trying to take away our guns, trying to take away. Each day they're always trying to change something to make it better for the person that complains. If you make that person that complains happy, then it fixes everything. Well, there's a small percentage that's complaining. The rest of us are going to work and enjoy what we do each and every day, and we're not fighting that fight. The ones that are complaining, trying to change gun laws and trying to change that, they're not working people. They're out just complaining. So we have a Constitution. We need to live by that Constitution and stick to it.
Okay, and that's what you mean by a living document.
That's the way I take it.
Okay, I think the phrase is typically meant to question whether judges will say it's a living document, saying that they can reinterpret the law based on modern principles. Is that something you agree with, or?
That they can change the way the law reads
That the
because
Supreme Court, every Supreme Court ruling revises the Constitution, and that becomes standing precedent, and that's how it lives. That's how it breathes new life into it.
and I don't believe that, like I said, I don't believe that they need to change everything that's already written. It was written.
Well,
for us to-
they're saying they're not changing the text, so they're not changing it, but they're changing the way it's applied.
Right.
So do you think that's correct, or?
It all depends on how they're saying it's implied. Because everything they've changed here recently, I don't agree with.
Okay.
I don't believe the way that they're reading into stuff and saying that that's what it says.
Maybe we could zero in by understanding what you believe the words progressivism and originalism are and refer to and describe.
I'm not big on that. I mean, I don't study much on it. I can't tell you exactly how I feel on that. I don't know to explain those words. I can't explain it.
Okay, let's see. I have a question now. I'm trying to figure out where I said it. Oh, your question 19 on endorsements. You said you believe you have much more support from the community this race than you did in the last race. On what do you base that? Because if you're talking to maybe 100 people, how many people voted the last time the precinct 5 constable was elected, how many votes, how many people do you think it's gonna take to vote for you to win?
Last go round, I believe there was a total of 10,000 in our precinct that actually voted. It would have taken 5,001 to win it last time. I do know that he made a lot of promises last time, saying that he just wanted 4 more years and he was going to back down after that. A lot of locals believe that and really believe that he would back down. And he's not going to. He's going to continue on again. And those big supporters that my opponent has have came to me personally and said, I thought it was done. That's the reason why we voted for him, to give him one last term. And so I've had a lot of phone calls and stuff from the community telling me, hey, we're supporting you now. We probably should have supported you last time.
Okay? Enough of a groundswell, you think you're gonna win?
I hope so.
Okay?
We can talk a little bit more about that offline.
Yeah.
Question number 8. What is your position on taking federal money for your department? You had said, indicated grants issued to departments through the state and feds. Programs help small agencies when there is no other way to obtain money. So would you take any and all money from the state or feds if it's offered? Or would you even pursue it to get that to augment your budget in case sheriff came in and took all your money from the commissioners, you know, that you were hoping to get? Would you go outside to get that money to augment it, in other words?
I believe there's a lot of different options out there to get money for the department whenever it need be. There's grant programs out there for small agencies to get like bulletproof vests, to get equipment that we need on a daily basis. A lot of times nowadays when a big crisis comes up, we're undermanned and underpowered. The opponent has more technology, more ammunition than our common officer that's on the street. That San Bernardino that happened the other day, they ended up pulling in military style equipment, and I know the community and the public doesn't think that we need that anymore, but we actually do. We need equipment to be able to do our job nowadays, and getting grants and things like that might pay for it. But as far as if we're saying take this money for favor here or something like that, no. I don't know if that's what the question was.
Yeah, kind of headed in that angle. So what if there's strings attached, you know, from the standpoint? We'll give you money, but, you know, we need this type of reporting done, you know, for our records at the federal level.
See, I know right now, if you buy more than 2 guns in a 2-week period, that it goes automatically to the FBI and higher agencies. So they tell you don't buy guns at a public store more than once every 2 weeks, because then it has to go up to a higher level. What does it matter if you have 1 gun or if you have 2 guns? What does it matter if you got 1 gun or 100 guns? Why would they even have that in there to where you would have to document it more if you have more than 1 gun, if you bought more than 1 in 2 weeks? I don't agree with that. I don't agree with them knowing everything that we have personally. So no, I would not take money and offer them more information to be able to get that money.
Okay.
So I have 2 questions. What cases would you use drones to fight bad guys?
I know right now a good time to use the drones is whenever we have a foot pursuit or something like that, to be able to track them through the woods. When we have a person that we're setting up, like the past 2 Fridays, we've had a SWAT scene. It would have been really good to have a drone over that spot to protect the officers and to be able to watch from the outside of what was going on the inside. Because yeah, we're talking back and forth on our radio, but you can't actually see what SWAT is doing on one end while we're on the other end. So, special in progress calls, it would definitely help out, I believe.
How do you feel about black cars? Black law enforcement vehicles?
I have no problem with a black car. The state of Texas does require that you're supposed to have some type of marking to say that it is law enforcement on the vehicle. So most cars now have the ghost writing. It's marked, it is kind of sneaky, but you do catch a lot more road rage and stuff with those vehicles compared to the others.
Okay.
You probably saw the video recently about the school incident where a teacher was unable to get the student off their cell phone. Administrator comes in, they bring the deputy in, and the deputy ends up trying to lift the student out of her desk, where the desk falls over and creates this whole video scene. I guess, what's your view on that video, and is there anything the officer could have done to prevent that negative impression, or should have done?
By law enforcement rules, we're allowed to use as much force necessary to control the scene, and as much force necessary to be combative to what they're using against us. On that scene, using a cell phone in school, I don't believe that that is a law that's being broken. In that area of the United States, it is a school rule and a school law in that area of the United States. In the state of Texas, it's not against the law to talk on your phone in school. I don't believe a school resource officer should be doing school rules. You do state laws, and that's your duty there. You're there to protect each one of the students, not to enforce school rules. So enforcing a school rule at that time, he should have turned around and walked away. Using the phone, principal needs to come in and handle that. If that student and the principal was to get in a fight, then they would have to use force to take the student out. But I don't believe that that officer should have ever even made that scene. Watching the video, you have 20 students in that classroom. That is high school students. One officer being able to fight 20 students at one time is not going to happen. Those students would be able to take that officer over quick. So he had to take that child, put him on the ground, handcuff him as quick as he could, and watch to make sure he wasn't going to get jumped by everybody else at the same time. So it's a catch-22. He did his job, but it looked bad. Just because it looks bad don't mean it's bad. So where I had a problem with the whole thing was there was never an investigation. It automatically went to he was guilty from the first 5 seconds of it. Nobody ever gave him a chance to say, well, if this would have happened, or if this would have happened, or this did happen. He was judged on the spot immediately, and that shouldn't happen.
Okay, I have kind of a two-part question. The first part is, who has the authority to give direction to the constable? You, the police chief of the city of Magnolia, gives you direction. You say, yes, sir, you do what he says. So who is the direct boss over the constable, and how does that work? And then once you've answered that, I've got a second part here.
Okay. To start, the main boss that would be over the constable, because the constable's not really under anyone except for the governor. The governor can be the main boss of them, which the governor doesn't get involved in local agencies as it is. Going back on that also, since the commissioners and the county judge handles our budget, they can decide on what we are and what we're not going to be able to do sometimes. They would not be able to stop me from doing proactive law enforcement, but they would be able to cut my budget if I didn't want to do what they wanted to do.
Okay, my part two is from a press release from Monday, October 26th, wherein the Dallas County Sheriff basically followed sanctuary city methodology. And Governor Abbott issued this press release saying that sanctuary city policies like those promoted by your recent decision to implement your own case-by-case immigration detention plan will no longer be tolerated in Texas. So basically, the way I would read that Governor Abbott threw down the gauntlet to the Dallas County Sheriff. But, so how would you view something like that? Do you think Governor Abbott was in line with what he said and did?
I can only enforce the laws that are provided to us. As of right now, we don't have an actual law against immigration that we can uphold at the local level. That is something that the state and the U.S. government needs to be stepping up to. We have never been allowed to. If the state would allow us to, yes, I would be all for it.
Okay, so Governor Abbott listed several points about things that he envisioned doing, but obviously he can't fire the Dallas County Sheriff, or even, I mean, he issued essentially a threat, but he has no way of enforcing that threat by state constitution or state law at present. And you think that's the proper relationship?
I believe everything can be worked out with words, to a certain extent. If Abbott has that much time to investigate what Dallas Sheriff is doing, then they have time to sit down and discuss it and figure out a game plan of how they could actually work it out together. And I believe Abbott's on our side. He just needs the knowledge too of how we can actually fight the war on the immigration, because there's a lot coming through our Texas border each and every day, and it's got to slow down. It's like a movie theater. You can only sell so many tickets in that movie theater, and then it's full. You can't just keep coming in and using the same resources if there's no more to provide.
Okay. So we're just over 35 minutes, I believe, into it, and so that gives us, what, about a little less than 10 minutes. I think we're another round the table. What's your opinion about CHL, open carry, and constitutional carry?
Where they've got their research from is Montana and Arizona, is the open carry. Well, it works for them because there's as many people in Tomball as there is in the entire state, these other states. You can't regulate what they do on farmland and implement it in city life. You can't have, I don't believe that everybody in the city of Houston can walk around with a gun on their hip and it'd be a safer place. I believe for the most people with a CHL, and they are open carrying, they're probably going to be the first victim. I do believe that every person should be armed, but the surprise is a better way to fight the fight than telling them up front, I have a gun on my hip. When it goes back to it, they say it's going to go back to the cowboy days. Well, in Tombstone, you were not allowed to carry your guns into town. You checked your guns in at the bar whenever you came into town, and that's to keep the fight. I don't understand that once you got drunk, then they gave you your gun back and you were allowed to go on out. But it kept the fight away at that point. So I agree with the CHL. Everybody should be allowed to carry a gun. You were given that right with the Second Amendment. But open carry, I don't agree with that. I would not open carry off duty at any time because you take the surprise away. I carry it all the time when I'm away, and you're taking away the surprise.
I don't think you started the clock, so that gives.
So what about
that's right?
the constitutional carry?
What's that?
What's your view on the constitution carry you mentioned?
The open carry?
Constitution carry.
What's the Constitution carry?
The Constitution says you can carry, you don't need a license to carry it.
I don't believe that you do.
Yeah.
But I do feel for legal aspect, if you were to getting to a gunfight with somebody that was robbing you at Home Depot or at Target or wherever you were at and you were getting robbed and you had to use your gun, it does show some type of training that you have went through. It does tell you the consequences if you was to use your firearm. It will tell you all the rules about what you're going to have to fight if you were to use your gun. And it even happens with us whenever we pull our gun on a scene. It's going through our brain, thinking about that lawsuit that we're fixing to go through, that trial we're fixing to go through if we were to have to pull that trigger. It will definitely stop the automatic just firing. It's just like driving a vehicle. You do have the right to drive a vehicle, but you do need some type of training to be able to drive a vehicle.
So on your question number 13, you basically said, you know, it was basically,
Or were you hobnobbing on mine?
nope, you were done.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about corruption.
So you're carrying on now.
It was talking about
The
corruption.
kids. Okay.
And you said, I also believe allowing outsiders to review information is always helpful. I believe being a strong Christian man helps you from being corrupt. So every politician in Montgomery County is a strong Christian man, but at least they say that. How do we know that? I mean, what does that mean to you, and how do we know that? And because a lot of them, I would say there are some problems in the county, and that's not stopping them. You understand the question?
Got it.
Kind of. Well, okay.
You can't tell someone how much of a Christian you are. That's something that's in your heart. People see that by the way that you act, by the way that you are, by the way that you portray yourself to the public. There are some people that are Christian, have shows on TV and preach the Bible, that I do not feel that are Christian inside. I am not one to judge another one's faith or anything like that. I know in my heart, I was raised by a Christian grandfather, Christian grandmother, Christian mother, Christian father. We grew up in church our entire life. My whole family, for generation to generation, has always been in church. We believe in hard working and loving God. So, how you can tell that it's in me, you should be able to see by the way that I act on a daily basis. But as far as corruption, when you're in a place for a long period of time and you're doing the same thing every day, I think it would add to chances for corruption because you feel invincible after a certain period of time.
Okay, so you kind of just alluded to.
That was already your second.
That was all.
Okay. Does constable have the discretion to make a department policy not to enforce certain laws?
Does the constable have the power to make a policy not to uphold laws?
Right. So we've been told that, officers have discretion not to give a speeding ticket, and they just give you a warning, right?
Right.
Some people suggest that, cities can become sanctuary cities. Other people have said, well, constable has the right to say, we're gonna focus on this area, and we're not gonna enforce these other laws. So does a constable have legitimate reason to make a discretionary decision not to enforce certain laws?
Yes, I guess what you're asking is, do they have to enforce every law? Well, since they are a civil-based department, they don't have to enforce any law except for the civil law. They can sit in the office and not do anything. But the sheriff's department has to uphold the law because that's the criminal side of Montgomery County. So if he did not want it, if the constable does not want to enforce certain laws, I guess that's what we're asking. They wouldn't have to. I feel that if a law is broken, that you must act. It's a mission if you don't. As far as a speeding ticket, I don't believe that everybody deserves a speeding ticket. I've had residents of the city pass me 365 days of the year, possibly twice, so they come through town over 700 something times a year, and I've never caught them doing a traffic offense. So the first time that I do catch them doing it, I don't think that they should be issued a citation for the very first time. If I've seen them on a daily basis not commit an offense on a Class C level. So it's discretion, and on a Class C level, anything above a Class C, I believe that we need to contact the DA's office and see if they will accept charges.
Okay,
Last question.
you're a young man, usually in the context of, we usually hear the term term limits in the context of president, elected officials in Washington and so forth. How long do you think a constable ought to serve? Have you set yourself a goal if you're elected that you're going to serve for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years?
I would love for the terms to be longer, to where it's not 8 years, because 8 years is not a long enough time to get a lot of stuff done. So I would say at least 3 terms.
Well, 4-year terms, that's 12 years then.
Yes. A minimum of 3 terms is what I would set my goal for.
Okay, and since I still have a little time left, I got a second question. You indicated early on that you were the only detective in the city of Magnolia. I haven't seen anything in here that jumps out at me that says you've got a lot of experience managing people. Yet constable is going to be supervising, 30 people roughly? So describe your management experience, what makes you think that you're qualified to direct the efforts of 30 people?
Okay. Before I got into law enforcement, I was in the photography business. I went out to schools, had employees that worked along with me, and I managed them. After the boss that I had sold out, I opened my own photography company and ran it for a couple of years. I've worked for my family's company, Tomball Sheet Metal, many years throughout growing up. I ran big $1 million jobs at TSU. We mainly do schools, but different schools through the Klein ISD, Cy-Fair ISD, Pasadena, and I ran those jobs with 20 employees underneath me at any time. Being with Magnolia as a detective, I am a detective, but I'm also able to pass out orders just like any other supervisor, because when we're on a scene, they have to do what I want them to do. If I need them to block off a road for 2 hours, they're going to do it. But where you get respect from employees is showing them that you'll do the same job that they'll do. And I've always done that. I will do anything that I will assign somebody else to do. So I'm not going to tell somebody to go do this if I wouldn't do it myself. And that's where leadership, I think, strongly builds and employees respect leadership like that.
Okay,
All right,
thanks.
okay, that'll wrap that part up. We'll kill the camera.
Lily?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. 5 minutes. I'm
Wrap it up for
jumping
us.
right ahead here.
A lot of these questions were tough, especially for the progressivism and stuff like that. I'm not a government. I don't study government. I don't. I do watch a lot of TV
C-SPAN.
per se, not C-SPAN. I really like Glenn Beck. A lot of things that he says, but I do have questions on things that he says from time to time. As far as the community, I grew up in it. I have a great job right now. I love the job that I have. I do know that I can make a big difference in Montgomery County Precinct 5. You will definitely see, if I was to take this office, more proactive department. You're going to see an actual constable out there on the streets helping out on a daily basis. You're going to see a lot more effort to make sure that it's a safe place for us to live in. So my best, or my main request is your vote for me on March 1st for Precinct 5 Constable.